all of this stuff that I'm going to talk to you about this week, that I'm going to talk to you about today, it's just reiterating things, okay? So, but this stuff's really important, and I see a lot of people that when you're starting out, like, don't do these things. So just really start getting in your head that to get good, there's certain things that you have to do, and they will make you good. There's no question about it. If you do the hard work, you will get good, and you'll get a job, and you'll have a career, all right? So what I want to do this morning is just show you guys how to just paint in black and white and paint in value and paint environments. This is a really good way that I like to just set up my painting space, especially when you are starting out trying to do all this stuff. I think it's a really great way to set up your canvas so it's kind of there all the time. So I just make a new layer and I'm just going to fill it to black. So, and Command backspace is fill the whole canvas to your background color that you have here. You can do the foreground option or the background one. Doesn't really matter. That's just how I do it. And then what I do is I just want to drag out a few canvases. So just using the selection tool, just drag out some canvases. They could be different, vertical, super wide, whatever they are. Okay. This is a real pet peeve of mine, is like people do this as a canvas size. To me, you just have so many issues. Like, you drag out a canvas size and already you're fighting a composition, right? There's a reason why we have widescreen TV, because you have two eyes and they're both square. And when your viewing area is square, so when you put them together, it's kind of widescreen. And we just find that more appealing. So when you break your composition down, you find like wide format stuff more appealing. Like, you can already see that looks cooler, or that looks cooler than that square shape, right? That's the sort of stuff that they kind of need to start thinking about. So all I'm doing here is just setting up kind of like my canvases for my thumbnails. And then all I do is just lock that. And now I've kind of just got those there, and I've got a white background. So as you can see here, I've got a lot of reference, and it's all, I was thinking for the first painting, some sort of like jungle scene. And we're doing game stuff this week. So my big thing is like having a focus, you know. Why are we actually painting this level? Like, what's the purpose of it? So just start thinking about some of these story ideas and building something up in your head, and it'll make your painting more believable as we go along. So starting out, I'm just going to break this down really, really simply for you guys. So we can talk about some really simple stuff today, and then we'll get more advanced as we go along. So I want to create a value study, and we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 values plus black. Okay, so that should kind of be my midtone there, right? That I used. Now let's just paint in maybe some midground. What am I going to call it? I'm just going to paint in a shape. So let's just paint in any shape. And in fact, I'm not even going to look at any reference for this. I'm just trying to show you guys how you can set this up, because it's super important and pretty easy. So I'm just blocking in a shape here. Now, straight away, I'm already like thinking about design, okay? Now, when I say I'm thinking about design, let's really sort of break this stuff down. So let's think about blocking in a painting. I see this stuff a lot, so it's really important. So if we just think about design, and just sort of blocking in. So we're creating an environment, right? But because we're breaking this stuff down so simply, all this stuff is just about shape. It's about shape design. That's all it is, okay? Composition is about designing with shapes. So just the fact that something is a tree and something is a plant, something is a river, that's all irrelevant. if you want to get a good composition, that stuff is totally irrelevant at the beginning. All we're thinking about is shape. So if I look at this, what is this telling me? That it's just kind of 3 triangles and they're in the middle of the page, right? If we then do this, so if we do something like that, is that a whole lot more interesting than that? Just to look at? All of a sudden we're starting to see, it's like a weird tangent here. If we now look at this, could you think that maybe that is like some floating avatar style rocks or something in just a really basic level? Do you think that does this image here on the right seem like it has perspective to it? So what we're doing here is we're just arranging the placement of these shapes, and the way you arrange those shapes can give you so much information for free. The people that are the best at, illustration, characters, concept art, map painting, whatever it is, they understand this basic stuff the best. They have the best grasp of how these basic elements and things like design principles fit together. So really try and learn that stuff. It's hard. It's really hard because it's a grind and it's pretty boring, but just start really trying to work on this stuff. So I'm mentioning this to you guys, and it's kind of a little bit boring, but it's because this is the mindset that you're thinking about when composing pictures. This will help. This will make your paintings not feel boring. Or a lot of times when you're starting out, you'll look at your painting and be like, it's not working. Like there's something wrong with the composition, but I don't know what it is. Why doesn't this look like a some cool environment artist painting? Like I don't know why it doesn't, but it just doesn't, and I don't know how to fix it. A lot of the times that's just to do with your composition and the way you arrange your shapes, okay? So it's really super important, and that's what I'm thinking about when I'm doing this stuff. So all I'm thinking about here is just shapes. So at the moment, we can go into some other rules like a little bit later. I'm going to lock that. But let's just kind of get this sort of just roughed in. All right, this is going to be default painting. So just a little river, and let's think about having something in the foreground. Now, does this to you feel like there's perspective in this painting? Have I drawn a perspective grid? Have I done anything than adding there's kind of 3 shapes here? That's all I've done. But this feels like a big giant scene with perspective, right? So once again, we're going back to this, thinking about how you arrange those shapes. If you can work out how to do that, you can solve a whole lot of problems in your painting really early on. And it's about like organizing that stuff, okay? So now I've got this midtone in, and I've got to like kind of kick my brain into reverse now because I've all of a sudden got a midtone. So I'm going to think about, rather than painting in like the shape over the sky, I'm thinking about just putting the sky in, and the bit I leave is the shape. But to me, all I do is think about, so I don't think about it as like a rock sticking out. I just think about it as I'm just adding in a white shape. But my white shape is just going to happen to be the sky. And you will find that you get really interesting stuff going on doing this. I was thinking about shape. I don't know what it is. I'm just trying to compose those elements so that I find them appealing. And I'm thinking about like the size and weight of all these shapes. So how they contrast and kind of like fit together. So I've got big shapes, smaller shapes. I'm trying to avoid. I always like to, when I'm learning, I always find that I learn by kind of people telling me of things to avoid rather than do this. So, and I think that helps you break rules better, right? So if you just avoid stuff, you don't have to worry about like what it is that you have to do. It's just avoid these things. So something that I'm avoiding is getting like all these to line up. So these bits, I'm just thinking about having different, so they all kind of like are on different planes. But at the moment, all we're doing is thinking about those basic shapes. But what I will see all the time, do not do this, all the time is people will do this. This is going to be pretty nasty looking. Throwing one extra thing in there, but essentially, quite often starting out this value study, this is what a lot of people do. Now, these are the problems with doing something like this. And this is why I say things to avoid, you know. See how you got this line across here, you got this line across here, you got this line across here, and all this stuff is kind of broken up. It's kind of like mirrored, 50-50 either side. So we want to avoid that kind of stuff because essentially, even though there's lots of stuff going on in this painting, and I'll see people totally finish, like spend 30 hours on a painting, and this is essentially the composition. Not exactly this, but essentially this same thing. And what you're doing is you're doing this. You are just doing that. You are making this your composition. Not exactly that, right? You got to think about it, but all the stuff is like even down the middle. So if we flip that, we've got the same thing, even kind of vertically as well. And this part here, so this relation to this relation to this, and this relation to that, that is commonly referred to as layer cake. So basically, all these elements are kind of the same thing. So when that starts happening, it starts like killing all the life to the painting. So sometimes when you're painting and you find like it's not, I don't know what's wrong with it, it just doesn't look that dynamic and stuff. A lot of time what happens is your basic shapes that you create are becoming equal and similar, and that will kill the kind of like the dynamicness of the painting. All right. So things to avoid. So try and avoid that stuff. So if we go back to this painting now, you can start to see that, oh, this shape is different to that one. This one's got a different width. You know, this one's a thick shape. This like finishes at a different length. You know, like everything. We're breaking a lot of this stuff up into different weights and different forms and eventually different kind of planes and surfaces and all that stuff. So at this point in time in a painting, everything's super easy, right? Really try and understand this stuff because this is kind of like the base for doing, you know, a big painting that's in the next Avatar movie, okay? So this is a base to understanding how to make something look cool. And really just try and wrap your head around that. It just takes practice though, right? It takes practice and doing this stuff all the time so you start getting understanding of how you can solve problems as you're moving along. There's a few things that I've done in here that we can just emphasize just to show you guys really simply how this stuff works. So I'm just going to put some sort of just whatever it is, little design element like that, little piece. It's just a bit of rock or something. Sort of break it up a bit. Whatever that is, okay? So this bit that I've put in now, and let's just cut a hole in this and break this shape up a tiny little bit. So you notice, like, I just put this stuff in, but I'm doing things like subconsciously, and if you think about it, you can understand it. But what I've done there is I've just added a bit of negative space into this rock. But I didn't make these two the same size and shape. I varied those up, so that becomes a bit more interesting. I've cut into this rock here, and I've cut 3 separate little bits. And but they're all different sizes, right? So as soon as you start going, okay, well, I'm going to put this one, and put this one here, and put this one here, and put this one here, it starts just becoming like, it's a bit boring. If I cut into the rock and do it all the same shape, it starts seeming unnatural. You know, so these are all kind of like fundamental design principles. So, for example, I can really show you guys how this works. And it's pretty cool, actually, just to see how your brain analyzes some of this stuff. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on a layer so that you can sort of see how this works. And I want to just make this box exactly the same so you can see it. I'm going to put these together here, and now I've got my circle. So I've got one circle, put 2 circles, 4 circles. Who sees those circles as 2 groups of 2? Everyone see that as 2 groups of 2? Yep. Your brain just does that. What do you guys think that is? Yeah, triangle? Sorry? 1 group of 3? Okay, let's make this even more simple. What do you think now? So 1 group of 3. Yep. Now what about if I do that? Group of 2 and then 1 extra one? Yep. Which one do you kind of find more interesting? Left or right? Right? Okay. So you're starting to learn some stuff about design. This one is a bit more boring. This one's kind of interesting. You kind of don't know why it is, but it just is. It just feels more interesting, right? Once you start learning those relationships, you can start incorporating that stuff in your painting and like using it to your advantage to design with, okay? So this stuff is super simple and super basic, but you need to get your head around it so that when your paintings become more complex, you can work out, you can kind of like troubleshoot, right? You can go, oh, I don't know why this part's not working, because it's going to happen. No matter how good you are, that's going to happen. You know, this part's not working. How do I fix it? And like 99 times out of 100, it just comes back to that basic design stuff, and you can learn how to, you know, fix your paintings. Okay. So this is kind of like grouping and, you know, how kind of shapes work together. So stuff gets a lot more complicated than this, and we'll kind of go through over some more of this tomorrow. But that's how the real basics of this kind of work. So something that I'm going to talk to you guys now about is scale. So I've now started putting these elements in, and we know that these are kind of nice-ish design because, you know, we've put those in subconsciously, but they don't match, and they're, you know, different spacing and stuff, and we can't kind of group them together and whatever. So that's what we want to avoid. You want to avoid things becoming boring in your painting. So that's what I'm trying to teach you is like, these are the things to avoid doing. Okay. So now we've got these sort of shapes. We can start pushing how big things are. So at the moment, there's a few things that I've done that are just inherently making you feel something about this painting, but we can push that even further. So if I have these little gaps here and these kind of designy bits here, whatever they are, they're just rock structures. If I start putting some of those in here, making that shape a bit chunkier, and maybe I'll put some in here as well, we're going to start having a feeling of how big this place is. Most people looking at this won't understand why that happens, but you do. You start to like link things together. Now what's happening is these little shapes here that I've put into the side, they're relating to this shape over here. So, but what I've done is control like the thickness of that shape. The reason why I've controlled that, the size of that shape, is because I want it to appear that it's in the foreground, okay? So something that's in the foreground, like if you're looking at stuff, if I'm looking at my Cintiq here, that's going to appear bigger than something in the background, right? So foreground bigger, background smaller. That's easy stuff, right? It's just kind of common sense. But how you control that in your painting is super, super important. It'll be the difference between your painting looking really just not right at all, or just really working, singing kind of together and coming together and having a really nice rhythm to it and perspective and everything. So controlling all these things means we still have this nice feeling of depth and perspective. With only a couple of values, a couple of shapes here, there's still nothing crazy going on, right? Okay, so we can start to control this a bit more, right? So let's get maybe this negative space in there too. And I kind of want to make that bigger. So we can control this stuff later as we go along. And now that's kind of messing with that shape, but that's okay. We'll just kind of paint it out, get it to work. And that's fine. So we've now got this negative space that's bigger than this negative space here. And so we're starting to create a bit of relationship. Now, this is called organizing your painting. So starting to organize things, get them working together, right? Now, how can I emphasize all this stuff even more? How can I make this space feel even more epic? So what I might then start doing is go, well, I want some of these elements in the background as well. But think about what we did before. We're going to make our brush a little bit smaller and just start incorporating maybe some of that stuff.